Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Masala Chai with Rajiv Khurana. And today, instead of having one guest, I have two guests with me, Dr. Aquil Busrai and Gajendra Chandel. The rule for our Masala Chai conversation is very, very simple. There are hardly any rules. We are going to be discussing an issue which is very vital for everyone, handling sin. This is something which people have been bothered time and again, and then they keep quiet about it. But the question is, for how long are we going to keep quiet? When do we start conversing? And instead of sensationalizing the discussion, can we think in terms of what could be the collective solutions? And maybe some individual may think in terms of creating solutions and others could join in. So friends, the format is going to be very, very informal. Initially, for the first 40 odd minutes, Aquil, Gajendra and I will be in conversation. And in this, it is not necessary that I must ask questions and they only answer. Even they can pose questions to each other and even to me to respond. So this is going to be a good e-goshti amongst us. And then, of course, my eyes would be on the panel so that you can think in terms of commenting through chat. But if you have any question, use the Q&A tab. That will make it much more easier for me to read it. But if you are so used to chat box, and if you have a question, put a Q in front of that and a hyphen, then I would know that that's your question. Allow me the liberty to pick and choose your question. I already have some questions in advance, which I'm definitely going to be picking up for discussions amongst us. And then, depending on time available, I'll be picking up more and more questions as we proceed. I would also make it open for you to comment, but allow me to read your comment rather than allowing you to come on the screen and speak. So therefore, the formula is very, very simple. Use the American way of writing. If the sentence is going to go beyond 18 words, break it into two and keep it simple English. No British conjunctions or stretching it. Keep it short and sweet. Kiss is the right way. So in this chai, we shall be focusing on four aspects. Create some ideas, harvest the ideas, align the collective thought in the professional bodies, because professional bodies do not mean only management associations. I have a lot of rich experience of incidentally working with doctors in their associations also, engineers also, even the school teachers, school principals, everyone has associations. And let me tell you, the problems are the same everywhere. So what are those problems? Can we align ourselves in terms of creating some meaningful solutions? And if we are in a position to create that meaningful solution, can we create the right impact? So my today's chai has the acronym create, harvest, align, and impact. So friends, my first question to you, Aquil and Gajendra, is why do things go wrong? Aquil. And a shorter answer, please. Any answer beyond 40 seconds is a longer answer.
It depends whether what you call wrong. Sometimes there is the ups and downs in any organization, whether it is association or an organization. And those ups and downs should not be taken that something has gone wrong. When they are down, something has got deflated, and that is a temporary phase in any organization. But if the deflation continues for a very long time, then something has gone wrong. I would write off something to say, oh, everything is gone wrong in any organization or association.
Great. So that means just like human body, we all have the right to fall sick. So maybe organizations, when the people come together, they start working together, there are impediments, and sometimes we may feel things are wrong. Gajendra, what is your perspective on this?
See, first of all, need to understand that what is all this we are talking about? What the basic fundamental? See, professional bodies is nothing but a group of people coming together or being put together from any learned profession, and they come together for the purpose of not only maintaining or for their own interest, but for the interest of the profession. Yeah, so they are expected to have certain regulations, actually self-regulation, which helps in maintaining control and oversight of the legitimacy of that profession, right? Now, what happens is that over a period of time, the conflict of interest of the individuals, especially if the code of ethics and code of conduct has not been formulated in a structured manner and not announced to the world in as many words as it is, then it is liable to fall off. That's the least I can say. Because human beings have their own interests, and if it is not clearly spelt out in a certain way that this is the way we will behave, this is the way we will act, and this is what we will do, and this is what we will not do. If it is not spelt out clearly, then it is likely to fall off.
That's wonderfully put. Let's look at these professional bodies as three of us thinking and working like doctors. Doctors first try to diagnose what the ailment is. And then in case there is a team of doctors, they concur in terms of focusing very clearly, yes, this is the ailment. And then we start thinking in terms of cure and also the care. Maybe initially we may think in terms of why things have gone wrong in different professional bodies. But as the discussions proceed further, we will have to also think in terms of what needs to be done and collectively what could be the responsibility of the silent majority and the non-silent individuals also. Akil, I was listening to one Panditji and he gave me a very interesting gyan. He said, and I'm going to add some masala to the discussion by quoting him in Hindi, 5 पा आदमी को बहुत परेशान करते हैं, ईगो पैदा करते हैं और इससे कन्फ्लिक्ट होता है. 5 पा. पहला पा पैसा, जिसके पास ज्यादा पैसा मनी वो हो गया ईगोइस्ट. दूसरा पा पद, the position the person occupies, and obviously in professional bodies that pad is very vital. The third is Padavi, the title. The title you grant in terms of fellows and senior fellows and this and that, the distinguished fellows. The fourth, and that is Pratishtha, popularity. The aim, the purpose to get that popularity by occupying that position. So, 4, Paisa, Pad, Padvi, Pratishtha. But the fifth pa, we all suffer from in professional bodies, and that is Panditya. How strong, brilliant, intellectual I am. The more educated I am, the more intelligent I am, I take pride in bringing down the other guys. And these blend of 5 pa can create havoc in professional bodies. For the benefit of all my friends, let me repeat again those 5 pa. Paisa, Pad, Padvi, Pratishtha, Panditya. Now, if we think in terms of these reflections, what has been your experience of being a member of professional bodies so far? Akil.
First of all, Rajiv, I'm glad you didn't add the 6 pa is called Patni. So you left the
But she's not part of the professional body. Bosses cannot be part of the professional body. That will be very, very dangerous.
On a serious note, not that I understood your fourth and the fifth is too high Hindi, but I don't agree with that approach at all. People do not get into professional bodies to show how intellectual they are or how famous they are.
I'm
Or
not
how
saying
well.
that. I'm not saying that. These are the 5 aspects which actually trouble individuals. So when they are part of the organization, these 5 things are also with them. And somewhere or the other time, these things start creating clashes amongst people. That's the point.
The Panditji may have his own way of looking at it. But if you look at it from the pure point of view of professional bodies, when they start, and I like the way Gajendra mentioned that the rule of engagement, it is not clear why we are here and what we'll do. And especially Gajendra, when you said what we'll not do in the end. Most of the good associates start with good intent because the like-minded people want to do something for the profession. And there's no doubt in that. It is later on this Padvi and titles and all come in, and that sometimes actually reshapes the atmosphere. So we create atmosphere. It is not born in all the association. We create that by some element coming in to take something, what is in it for me, more out of it than what I'm giving it to it. And I'm associated with many of these associations and proud of that for many years. There's one, of course, I will not take names today. One organization we formed with TV Rao, Adil, Sujaya Banerjee, Sri Jamdar and others about 10 years ago. It is working beautifully. It is working smoothly because it is only focusing on professional activity. There's nobody president there, there's no secretary there, there's one person who's the wheel behind the whole movement, but bunch of advisors who work it only for one cause. They will contribute to the profession. Now, why this happens is that sometimes the whole way we select people is faulty. And you and I have had debates for years, and I still don't agree with you that whether we should select the leaders or we should elect the leaders. Now, you have gone from the mountaintop to democratize the whole process. I respect you for that. But when we go for election, we actually deprive some of the well-meaning, knowledgeable professionals to take on leadership position because they're not competing. They're there for the joy of profession. Now, you and I have had this debate, we'll never agree on when the trains will never meet. But why I feel the selection is good, if your selection board is very objective, they will select people who will do well for the association and do well for the profession. And they will not go for the that fourth P आपका जो था क्या बोलते हैं प्रति
Pratishtha.
what is
Pratishtha, the
whatever it
popularity.
means.
Yeah.
It sounds very nice. So it's popularity. They'll go for popularity. They'll go for my contribution. So sometimes the structure that we create is defective, and then we blame the whole system.
We moved very fast into the election and selection discussions. The Panch Pa was more in terms of igniting the discussion because I wanted to start with some masala and add the tea powder a little later. But let me hear Gajendra on this in terms of Panch Pa.
No, while I agree with what Aquil has mentioned, yet at the same time, human fallacies come into play in these professional bodies much faster than even in the organizations. In the organizations, there is a set structure, there is a set what you can call as business processes and systems to function, etc., etc. And many organizations have gone beyond in terms of their governance, right? But most of the professional bodies have limited themselves to certain set of activities and certain actions at any given point in time. Most of the professional bodies, what I have observed, have now not come out with code of conduct for their members and more so for the office bearers, number one. Number two, there are no ethics committees in most of these. And I've seen engineers' bodies, I've seen doctors' bodies, I have seen chartered accountants. They still have a certain code of conduct to a certain extent, and they have an ethics governing body. But most other professions that I've seen, or the professional bodies, they don't have that. They don't have anything called as what we expect in all our organizations and companies where we work is whistleblower policy, for example. None of these bodies have it. I have not come across except one of these in at least in this in our country, and therefore all these 5 P's or P's that you have mentioned, it's not that they are so predominantly visible, but underlying it plays a certain role in certain combination at certain points in time. And like what Aquil mentioned, election versus selection, neither is perfect actually. Unless and until people really believe that this is what needs to be done, and these are the people who will do it most selflessly. Yeah, so you will see in our own profession, I have seen our own professional bodies that I have seen, only the biggest names would go there. You will not come across the CHROs, for example, who are very brilliant, very bright individuals who could be there, but they are normally like me, for example, old timers, and those who have had the biggest positions, for example, one of the P that you mentioned, right? Because it is considered that if I have been a CXO of a 50 billion, 40 billion, 30 billion, $100 billion company, I am supposed to be of a certain, you can say, caliber. Yeah, for whatever word you want to use.
See, Gajendra, things are changing. If you see what you're mentioning is very true. A decade ago, it was a norm. And nobody but only somebody type of, what is it? Prasha, who is very famous. What is the word?
Pratishtha.
Learning Hindi. But you see the good trend. A lot of youngsters are coming in. And even those leaders that you are referring to, that those who had gray hair or no hair became leaders in this association, were wise enough, many of them were wise enough to encourage youngsters to come up. Subcommittees that were bought, groups, task force to drive something are all done by young people. And those leaders have not held on to position because of this. And that is where the dedication makes a difference. What drives them is the joy of growing the profession, growing the individuals. And if they get name in the bargain, that is a byproduct. They don't really go for that. The problem is somewhere else, and I'll touch upon that.
Aquil, I'm so happy that this discussion has moved to selection, election, and how some organizations are doing so well. But there is an old saying: very few people learn from other people's mistakes. Most of the people are other people. So maybe some organizations could be doing it, but we are not only talking about management professional bodies or HR professional bodies. Here we are talking about all categories of bodies, because people are people and there are issues. When you talk about election and selection, people do veer that why is it that the country only has to elect people, but in associations we must select people because there are issues there also.
I'm not saying that selection means leaving away the rights of democracy, etc. Let us be clear about the objective. Election happens when people are vying. I'll not take the name of the body, but a cricketing body we all know about. It's a platform to become minister in 5 years' time. So the election there is like a Mahabharata Yuddha. Did you get the right people? No comments. But
who are we to decide whether the people are right or wrong? Unless and until people collectively think in terms of, okay, these are the people I wish to send. Rajiv, let me heat up the discussion, Aquil. You may and I may keep disagreeing. No issues at all.
The crux of the whole discussion in Masala Chai is why things go wrong. It's because of views like yours. That we must have this way, we must not have it any other way. Do way which is beneficial for the association's objective of
Sure.
Chandel.
Which
Now,
also
if
make
that,
it to the point, Akhil, sorry, when you select a person because he represents a larger organization and he is dropped
select
from
a
the
person
top
right for that.
and then he occupies the position, does nothing throughout the year, and the whole year goes waste, as compared to someone who gets elected and has to justify his election to do something much more meaningful.
Okay, but then you selected a wrong selection panel. I've been part of a selection panel where the
Gajendra is
objective.
smiling and he has something important to say when the wrong selection panel gets appointed. Gajendra.
Let Aquil complete, then I'll.
If you cannot have a selection panel which is objective enough to select the, why some people shy away from elections in some of these bodies? They don't want to compete. If you are in an election battle for a position of this association, I feel that you'll do a better job. I will step aside. I said, no, Rajiv is a better guy for the association. And when I step aside, I'll be doing a great contribution to the association because I feel you're the right person to do it. Then Rajendra, who was that? Kerry, John Kerry was the running mate for the presidentship, and he stepped aside from that race in US, and he became the Secretary of State. He was one of the best Secretary of State in that particular period of time because he felt that the other person was better as a president. Now, no, Rajiv, when we start competing, that I want to be there because I want to be there. That is election. I'm all for democracy. But let us not set democracy to harm the association, which should serve a different purpose. And don't hide behind the curtain that why should the president of the country is elected, why the prime minister is elected, why can't we elect the president of the association? Let's not do those theoretical structure. Do what is right for the association. Do what is right for the profession. Choose the right person. Now, if the election is the right way of doing it, by all means, but our experience shows that over a period of 4 to 5 decades, if we just take 3 or 4 big management associations, I'm not talking about medical or CA because I don't know much about them, but here we have seen that sometimes election brings in a quid pro quo. You vote for me and I'll make you the secretary of the sports committee.
Gajendra.
See,
Akhil has, besides, adding to the masala chai, he has also brought the namkeen mixture along with you for you to respond.
See, what I have seen, I believe that professional bodies are expected to be self-regulatory bodies. Number one, they are set up. What for are they set up? What is the purpose of these professional bodies? I think number one is safeguarding the public interest, right? And public interest in this means largely the interest of that profession.
Members, yeah.
And this is what really gives them the legitimacy. Second, these professional bodies are expected to represent the interest of the professional practitioners, right? So that's number two. And third is that it also has to represent its own interest in terms of not only safeguarding, but also propagating what it can do for the larger good of the society, not just its member, but larger good of the society. My question is, how many times the so-called executive bodies of these professional associations, how many times do they really sit down and look at, in a structured manner, a systematic discussion on what kind of regulation do we have, what kind of restrictions, what kind of complaints or what kind of issues have we received, how have we addressed those issues? Yeah, have any of these professional bodies sanctioned some of its members? In every profession it happens. Yeah, we have seen in the companies, even in the best of companies known for its ethical behaviors, also there are unethical practices which happens. How many times do these executive bodies of these professional associations actually sit down to do that? Yeah. normally what I have seen is these bodies become very business oriented. They are also looking at revenues and expenditures and those kinds of things much more. So they also become like
events, because the employees have to be paid their salary, and their employee salaries are going up, and more the profitability has to be increased, bank balances have to be increased, blah 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 blah.
My view is, and that's what I have seen in many of these professional bodies, that they just go away from the very purpose of for what that actually professional body was formed or is required to work and act.
Very good point, Gajendra. Okay.
And
Aquil, you'll have to speak a little louder, please. Okay.
And it happens because majority of the members of that body remain silent.
Yes.
Majority of them.
I'll come to the silence of the majority little later, Gajendra, but I have another question which I must ask you and Aquil. You've raised a very interesting point, which is called the inflection point of change within an organization. When do we decide? Imagine a curve. Should we change when we are going up, growing? Should we change when we are plateauing? Or should we start thinking in terms of bringing about a change within the organization when we are going down in terms of members' expectation? When should the members, by and large, start talking about it? The leadership starts talking about the point of inflection, so that a new curve could be created.
The inflection should happen at the formation stage itself. What Gajendra is mentioning, that if we have a well laid out approach to checks and balances, and Gajendra, your point was that people get away with blue murder because they are in the term that period of time. If you have from the very beginning a clear idea that what are we here for, the purpose, then things will fall in place. And then what happens? These other activities of revenue, naam, sham, whatever, pratishtha, etc., comes in much later. The important part is the checks and counter checks. Now, there's one element which many times organizations suffer from, is the non-member leaders part of the process. Many associations have an office with few staff or something, whatever numbers is immaterial. They are permanent. The president, the secretary, the treasurer come and go. And the art of keeping the leaders happy for that term becomes the KRA for many of those office bearers. And I'm being very candid here. In that situation, then the interest is from the association or the leaders who are coming to drive the association in a particular direction. What is my sustainable model that I will not get affected by that group of people who are permanently there? And that is where the leadership counts. They are an important part of the association. It's not that they are I'm running down any of them, but to how much of influence they have on decision making must be decided by the leaders themselves. That is the job.
Yeah, you're right, Akhil. My question is, how many times do the executive committees, or whatever name it has, of the committee that runs these professional bodies, any of these professional bodies, they actually sit down and have Atma Manthan?
That is the point of inflection determination we were talking about.
Yeah, in companies we do that. We look at our very purpose, why this organization exists. What is our strategy? What is our strategic game plan, etc., etc. And what do we deliver to various stakeholders of the organization over a long period of time, not just quarter on quarter, year on year, but over a longer period of time as well. Although the managers come and go, but we have seen those organizations which have existed for 50, 100, 200 years. And they are the organizations which have done that Atma Manthan, Chintan, whatever you want to do, what you want to call, very frequently. And they have done the course correction very fast. Yeah, they are very agile. They do that.
To be fair, it happens. It happens in a very subtle way. Now, there are some associations who bank upon their past leaders as a conclave, as advisory what is called sounding board. And those past leaders are very careful not to interfere with the operations. And the sounding board really works very well. It's a subtle way. The leaders go and say, look, we are doing this, or sometimes there's a trouble. And I've personally been experienced of that when I was leading an organization. Go back to the bunch of people who ran this organization much before you and pick the brain. Accountability is yours. But taking a view from various quarters gives you a better perspective. And when some of these leaders in this, when they travel and meet members, this high tea after the meeting or before the meeting is not social event in my opinion. That's the biggest opportunity for leaders to connect. People go for high tea and say, okay, before the meeting, half an hour before that, 45 minutes before that, we'll chai and samosa. I think that is the most important part of a meeting for leadership team of this association. Mingle with the people and say, now many people will not candidly say openly that you are running it like a circus, but you'll get a feeling. Why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing this? Is the indication that we are not doing many things which the members want. And course correction, like you rightly say, that Chintan or Manthan must happen as a part of your checks and balances.
Akil, there have been organizations which are 70, 80 years old. Whatever the founders would have visualized, and that Atma Manthan hasn't happened, because you may be talking about few organizations we have done exceedingly well, but there are thousands and thousands of organizations in India which are actually suffering because there are infights. There are people taking advantage. There are coteries. There are fiefdoms. And therefore, members are suffering, and yet the members are quiet about it and they show no interest. They create more professional bodies, even they fall into the same trap. And nowadays, a better solution is they form WhatsApp groups and groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn. They function for some time. There is no cost involved. There is no leadership involved. And after a while, they close also. Perhaps that's a digitized way of finding relief in terms of getting to know Akil, listening to Akil, etc., etc. But when we talk about traditional organizations which are focused more on stability and they talk of agility, let's talk about Constitution of India. When it was created, it has been amended 105 times based on situation, which Atma Manthan we are talking about. Gajendra, that point of inflection has to be determined by the leadership and not sticking on to their own positions. The question is, when things go wrong in organizations, what's the way forward? How should we do it? Because if the infights are so strong that they are even issuing notices to each other, even getting on to physical fights, which we have heard of and seen, how do we revive such kind of organizations? And those number is increasing.
If you go back a little backwards to what Gajendra mentioned in the beginning of his talk, the whistleblowing policy and the addressal policy is missing. In one of the organizations, I have suggested that we should have a ombudsman. These are the what is called the pressure cooker ka whistles. Let the steam come out. Don't suppress steam. Ombudsman, if you select them well, and first of all, one must not doubt the selection committee and the ombudsman credibility. So your basic mindset, Rajiv, that the selection committee will be biased, they will put up a joker on the front.
We are holding on to that point. We have let that point far behind. Now we are thinking into when things are going wrong, how do we resolve it?
Gajendra, that's my favorite whipping horse for Rajiv whenever I get into a discussion with him. So I'm taking advantage. On a serious note, the whistleblowing policy inside Gajendra was mentioning that the members must have a way of venting their opinion, even if it's contrary to leadership. And that will make the leadership listen. Even if they don't listen, there must be a safety valve for ombudsman. That is what makes a healthy culture in the organization. Not going to court and putting a writ petition against Rajiv that he insulted me and he didn't let me become the secretary of this association. That is destructive.
Okay, that's interesting. So when we talk about whistleblower and we are talking about a whistleblower, have a ombudsman, which is more like a lokpal, which we had a lot of demonstration few years back in India also. But the question is, if that position also becomes a power center, then how are we going to resolve issues in the organization? Gajendra.
No, so as I said earlier also, that if the professional bodies don't regulate themselves, which is nothing but self-regulation, nothing can save it. Yeah, it will lose not just the members, but it also.
I mean, DP Singh is asking a question right now in the chat box. He says, whistleblower will blow whistle to whom? So there will people be only whistling and having a symphony of whistles. Nobody is listening to them.
I saw DP's message. I think there is a way of putting that ombudsman can handle the whistleblower very well, because the system must make it. It is not the individual.
And who is going to correct the system when there are interested people who are not interested in changing the system?
No, you have to make them interested if it's good for the association.
Okay.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
For example, even in India, the companies, all listed companies, for example, are required to have independent board members more than the non-independent board members. But we have seen how many of the companies, very large ones, also would operate. Yeah. Same cases with the professional bodies. A professional body which is really serious on that it wants to do good, it wants to sustain for a long period of time, should set up its own ethics committee, which is independent of the executive committee, etc., etc. I mean, and there are people who are not from that profession. Yeah, nothing stops any body, if it is a doctor's body or HR body or whichever, to invite some public figures to become the ethics committee of that body. Yeah, and similarly, the whistleblower policy can be made to be effective to the extent the members and the executive committee wants it to be effective.
Chandel, with due respect to you, why do you need an outsider? I mean, it's like saying your two cats are fighting, let the monkey come and fight about the roti, that old story. Why can't we have faith in our own people and trust them? If there's an issue, sort it out. Ombudsman could be very neutral person and must be neutral person. In a family, we go to some uncle or go to aunt, or if grandfather's day, we go to somebody, and they are what they call the listeners and judges. Your point is very valid that there must be avenue, but I totally, with due respect to you, sir, totally disagree that we are incompetent to manage ourselves. We should call somebody from the outside. Why?
Aquil, the question is that such body or such individual is not only to be fair, is to be seen to be fair also.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason that normally...
Again, if you are fair and you are behaving fair and your members feel you are fair, that's enough. Why do we have to tom-tom to people that we have an ethics committee and Justice Hegde will be chairing that Hegde committee, and anything that happens, Justice Hegde will be called and he will sit on the judgment for that?
Okay. Let me just change the gear now. We have had enough discussion in terms of why things are going wrong. Now let us think and spend the next 15 minutes in terms of how do we get in terms of correction. When you talk about whistleblowing, yes, one way is that a lot of whistles can start blowing if we open the technology platform of members giving the feedback. But whether members are motivated enough to even give that kind of a feedback or alerts, that depends on how members perceive you. And this is what Gajendra was talking about, that we must not only do a good job, we should be showing that we are doing a good job, a better job. Now the question is, when things have actually gone wrong, how do we create a revival? Sometimes surgery is also necessary. Maybe the surgery is painful. Deepak Barara had sent me an advanced question. He says, when things are really, really bad, is there any legal recourse open? And let me even touch that part. So that made me thinking, and I approached Ajay Kumar Tandon, managing partner of Lexington Law Firm. Sorry? He is on the call, but I got typically a written opinion from him saying, okay, give me a paragraph and I'm going to read it out. And Ajay and I go back to our Shriram College of Commerce days, and I really respect him for his intelligence, and he leads a very good team. And fortunately, I'm also the mentor of Lexington Law Firm. So the team really worked very well, and they pointed out few things which I must read out to people for awareness purpose. Because ordinary member says, "What can we do?" Let me tell you, I have even tried that and I have been successful. But I will not tell you that story right now. Akil is smiling at that because he knows the story. But then there are two dimensions to that: the criminal aspect and the civil aspect. And the team says, and don't get into straight away running to the police station, because everything depends on the facts and circumstances of each case. And therefore, you must consult the lawyer properly, think about it, whether you want to get into it or not, and whether you have the time available to fight the battle for a longer duration, because it is not going to be easy.
Gajendra, this sounds like advertisement for a firm.
No, it is not an advertisement for the firm. I'm giving my perspective on this. Don't add a different masala. We are having a masala tea. That will be coffee to the discussion. Okay, so there are provisions available in the IPC under section 403, dishonest misappropriation of property, 405, criminal breach of trust, 415, cheating, 463, forgery, 477A, falsification of accounts, etc. under the IPC. But you need right facts to go for it. Similarly, courts have also, under the civil matters, appointed administrators, observers, which you're talking about another person outside the court appoints, so that the deadlocks could be resolved and the unethical practices could be checked, the irregularities could be seen. And Akil, you have also been a part and parcel of similar kind of things, and you have seen the pain, how the organizations suffer. So after suffering, do we keep quiet or do we make the miscreants pay for it, is also another issue that we need to think before we start rebuilding this. Now the question is, fine, things have gone wrong. There are like-minded people who say, now let us put life to an almost dead horse. What do we need to do? How should we rebuild?
Ajay's opinion is very sharp and very clear. I don't know if it's possible to bring him on the call. I would ask him that there is another option called arbiter. What would he say to that?
Arbitration. No, that is dependent. Everything is. Sorry.
Arbitration. It's an arbiter.
Arbiter. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear it clearly.
So, ask Ajay if he can come on the call. I don't know if it's technically possible. But
I'm running against the time, so I'll not be able to take him on the call because there are a lot many other questions to be covered.
Everything you are here to sustain and grow the organization, not to destroy it by one action. Going to court and putting somebody into docks is very easy. But at the end of the day, your responsibility is to make sure the organization is above individual. I'm not saying that if somebody has taken a fraud, misappropriated finance or unethical behavior, they must be punished as per what is law requires. But that does not mean you burn the whole house down just to get rid of this one rat.
Akil, nobody is saying that, please. We are only saying a surgery performance doesn't mean that the person dies. A surgery is done. Now the question is, how do we look after the health of the individual who survived the surgery? That surgery could be minor surgery or a major surgery.
The health of the individual is this, the organization is the person. You remove that piece, now life continues. But I think I'll again go back to what Gajendra mentioned. Put the house in order through system to approach that. Define with the do's and the don'ts. Rule of engagement. I love the way he mentioned it in the very beginning. If we have that, you cannot do this. Period. You can't do it. Be clear enough. Don't just wait. Second is bring fresh-minded people, bring youngsters to leadership. It will have automatic change. If you see the generation of today's Z generation or whatever generation we are working on, look at their value system. They join organization for career if that organization is clean. They don't join only for money and power and pratishtha or whatever. They are very basic about purpose. And if those youngsters come who are very committed to doing something for the sake of doing it, they will bring an automatic change. Get rid of people who are dishonest by all means. But have a system of that dishonesty is surfaced. Don't be naive. Don't be prisoner of your system to say we can't do anything. Then the leadership should not be there. If they can't do anything about the rot in the system, they should step down.
Will that be easy to make them step down when they themselves are the cause of the rot and they're enjoying the rot, enjoying the position, please?
Sir, if the right people have come in, they will step down. They will, rather than have the organization go down the tube, they'll say, this is not the way I play the game.
So,
I will blow the whistle. I will rectify it. And if things don't work out, I'm not saying run away. So there's a difference in running away. All I'm saying is that those people will stand up to pressure and rectify the system. But in the beginning, bring right people, bring youngsters, bring people who are committed to the cause rather than the glory and pratishtha. And now my pronunciation is
Akhil, you're sticking to those 5 points. We left them behind. You're talking about bring people, new people, the guys who are responsible for the ailment, the sin in the organization. Why would they let the new people to come in? And then they will. You are trying to be very, very idealistic. So now let's think in terms of how do we actually do two things? How do we bring back life to the organization? And how do we rebrand the organization so that we can get the members back to start expecting the same old thing which they had, by which they had joined, and they start contributing more positively? Let's think in terms of solutions now, rather than hitting the dead horse or almost dead horse. Gajendra.
You go ahead.
No, as I mentioned earlier also, I think it is important, and I still say that it is important for any organization to survive, and not just survive, but thrive. And that thriving doesn't happen without respect. And respect doesn't come without Atma Chintan and Atma Manthan. It doesn't come.
So Gajendra is working like a Swamiji, and the people are enjoying that Aquil and Rajiv are having a planned fight to add masala to the chai.
Who said that?
Yeah, is that? No, I'm just guessing what people might be thinking. This is the fun part of our discussion, Aquil.
So I think it is important for the members of any professional body, first, to impress upon the executive body or whichever is the managing body, howsoever name it is called by, to impress upon them to come out very clearly. What is our code of conduct? What is it expected to do? What is it expected not to do, etc., etc. And clearly set out those kinds of, you can call them process systems, checks, balances, etc., etc. Those are necessary. Without that, no organization can survive, whether it is business or it is professional bodies. Today, we are talking of professional bodies because there are no set systems and processes which will sustain it over a long period of time itself. Yeah, in business, you know what is the purpose, etc., etc., and you have milestones and targets and all those kinds of things. In business, in professional bodies, it can go in many ways, unless and until it has set up its own constitution properly, and it lives by that constitution, tells its members that please tell us when we don't live by our constitution.
Wonderful, wonderful, Aquil. Yeah.
I would look at it this way, that these rules, regulation, guidelines that we're talking about, we should divide the time spent by the leadership team in running this association into 3 parts, roughly 3 parts. Only 1/3 of that should be spent on ground rules. Because if your beginning was wrong, then you have to spend more time rectifying. What Gajendra, you are mentioning, what are the do's and the don'ts must be kept as an audit issue on an annual, keep your eyes and ears open, whistleblowing policy, redressal, 1/3. Second part of 1/3 is that what do members benefit? Don't forget that you are there for benefit of member. You're not there to find out how many stars you can add to your system and the pratishtha, how much of pratishtha you get. Third, what are the changes happening? Can we keep up with the time? I'm very happy that one of the associations I'm very closely associated with went so much digital during the COVID. They did umpteen number of digital activities, and a lot of creases that were there in the garment got eased out because the members were feeling that something is moving in the right direction. That is the job of leadership, not to only rectify who's done wrong, what rule is wrong, what is rule of engagement. We are not here as a policeman. We are here to lead the organization as a profession to somewhere where they have not been.
Akhil.
Another dimension.
Okay, Gajendra, please quickly now. We've got just 10 minutes to.
So Aquil mentioned it very right. I think one of the important issues is that the member's voice needs to be there, which means there must be some kind of feedback mechanism. It can be confidential. It needs to be confidential about the quality of leadership that the leadership has provided year on year. If that mechanism is put in place in the professional bodies, I don't think any professional body has ever asked its members, you please give us feedback about how we have been functioning. Have we added value to you? Have we acted in line with our constitution or whatever it is?
They do.
Some of the organizations have tried, but then the question is, even members are least interested in terms of responding adequately. And the trouble is, when the members smell that something is not good in the organization, they start thinking of some other organization, or they stop participating. Or become as zamane mein mohabbat ke siwa, and they think in terms of, let me just move away and do something else, because if I have to make an entry into this organization, why should I spend my time and energy to come inside and correct the whole damn thing? It is not my problem. So the question is, how do we, now I'm just shifting the question, please, because this is a very vital question. How do we ignite the majority which is silent to actually take charge of reactivating the organization on the positive note?
The answer is very simple. Stick to your purpose, have activities that stick to the purpose. Now look at organizations like Rotary, look at organizations like Lions. The people are lining up to join them. Why? Because they identify with the activities that they do and they act on that. So let's not look for, and I don't agree with one point, Rajiv, which is generalization, sir. The members are looking that this is going wrong, this is going wrong. Most of the members are also looking this is going right. And that is the fuel. We've got to make sure that what is going right is as much talked about as what is going wrong. And
which brings us to a very important dimension, Akhil, that when you are doing good things, how do you communicate those good things as of today so that your brand building restarts happening?
And it shows. When you're doing good things, it shows. I mean, the moment you start doing brand building, then you are nothing but selling soap and detergent.
No, brand building does not mean advertising and talking about it. Brand building has various other connotations, please. By advertising, you don't build a brand, please.
See, unless
even the government fails after building the brand, because members understand what the true brand is about in terms of the kind of impact we need to create.
See, unless and until,
because we are actually discussing a topic which is very tough to be summarized in 1 hour of conversation, because even our viewers who are listening to us have such a diverse experience of different kind in different organization, that if I open the vistas open, maybe the whole night we will spend in terms of listening to their stories, and they would be right. And the question is, do we have a single solution? We don't have a single solution, but we need to think in terms of what could be the basic steps we could take. Akhil, you have been talking about very clearly, and I really appreciate that, what can be done from inside out to correct the situation. Fine. You're talking about leadership, you're talking about other issues, but what could be done from outside in? Members who are quiet, they need to do some correction. What could be the outside in role? And this is something which we all need to think about it.
No, outside in role happens when you segregate the inside and the outside. Let us face it, that is associations run for 1 or 2 years, depending on the term of office, by some set of professionals who come in the forefront and run it. If the rest of the members think it's only their job to run the organization correctly and my job is to criticize, then the organization is not going to grow. If members feel that something needs rectification, and Gajendra, sorry, coming back to your point, that something needs to be done. They have a right to say something. There must be an opportunity to say that, and some people should listen. It's not that all the suggestions will be accepted, but that dialogue must go on. And that good organizations, what they do, the office bearer, so the president, just for an example, travels to a chapter, meets members there, and picks up some vibration. This chapter is doing well. This chapter is not doing too well. And what is it that? Then you have some structures. You have some in places regional heads. Their job is to go and connect with the chapters. Now, these type of positions are not show ke vaste. They serve as a link between a regular member and the association leadership. And I think everyone has a role to play to make sure that things are, once in a while, they can go off the course and it's okay. Everything happens in the family also that way. But more or less, we are in the direction that members feel that my membership is worth it. That's all. My only test is that I'm glad I'm a member of this association. And if they don't feel that way, then we should actually do this manthan or chintan that you mentioned, Gajendra.
We will have to take Akil's class on Klisht Hindi Bhasha so that he understands the reality. And maybe my next topic, which I am planning, is in terms of how do we actually handle the Western thought in Indian context. But that could be a separate topic.
I can't pronounce.
No, it's okay. Akil, we are just.
So I think the idea is the vibrancy in organization happens when people listen and talk and discuss. This 1 hour would have been boring if you were asking me a question, telling me 41st second, time to shut up. Now, within the year, I would have shut up for 39 seconds. You allow people to express views. You allow people to ask questions. And most important, bring unsaid to the said part. And that is where I keep on hammering the youngsters. Bring them to the front. Put them in the charge. Those who criticize, put them in the charge. This is what happened in school. The guy who made the biggest mischief was made the monitor in the class for the girl. Put them in the position of leadership. They will rectify the organization because they were the ones who were criticizing it and said, now that I'm here, I will not let this not happen. Let's take a bold decision as a leadership team. Don't go away from the scene for Pratishtha portion. Bring youngsters.
That's a very interesting point, Akil, which you are talking about. But we are stuck to a point that the leadership will do something, but the leadership itself is at fault. Then the leadership will not do anything and only do some window dressing. 2 minutes left. And in fact, I'm just reading comment from Sudhir who says, very fact that this meeting is on gives hope that something is possible to be done. Absolutely right, Sudhir. This was the idea. We don't have solutions in 1 hour's time, but we decided to actually call a spade and talk about sin. Sorry?
To answer your question, last question. Sometimes a rule of change management is to change the management.
Yeah. So this is where the struggle is all about in terms of how do we change the management, which is non-performing and from inside out. And therefore, the silence of the majority is actually a major thing. So I got 1 minute left and I'll give you now precisely 30 seconds each. What are your 2 or 3 pointers for professional bodies that even if they falter, they need to rework and actually revive the organizations? And we have many of such examples going around us. 30 seconds each.
Good.
Ten seconds gone.
So let me take that. I think, and I have mentioned it a couple of times during this whole discussions itself, I think make the inactive members active. And number 2 is put a good quality feedback mechanism in place in any organization, especially the professional organization. And keep the business and non-business very clearly demarcated in the professional organizations if they have to survive and thrive over a longer period of time.
Wonderful. Akil, quickly.
I think the leadership should be made to connect with the masses and must be made accountable to report what action they're taking on hearing it. That is a continuous dialogue. The leadership must drive the way from their agenda point of view. They must drive it. They cannot just say democracy, everything will do what the public wants to do. But listen and come back and say, we heard this part we don't agree. We'll continue the way we are doing it. And this part needs rectification, we will do it. No shy away. It's no question of how many stars you have in your shoulders. It's a question of what is good for the organization. It doesn't mean you will accept all and sundry suggestions coming in, but be connected with the members. If the members are customers, if they are happy, carry on the way you are doing. Don't change because XYZ is changing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aquil. The moral of the story is very simple. In 1 hour's time, we would not be in a position to actually come to some conclusions. So we need more discussions, and therefore different types of sinners coming into my Masala Chai to talk about how do we handle sin in the organization. Thank you very much for the Masala Chai with Rajiv Khurana. This has been a wonderful session. Thank you, Aquil. Thank you, Gajendra. And let's continue further next month in terms of coming up with a new topic. And maybe we may continue with the same topic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless everyone, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. This guy is a provoker. Yeah.